In the early 1990s, McLaren tested a Lamborghini engine in its Formula 1 car, in a move that left even Ayrton Senna impressed. The engine produced more power than the Ford Cosworth they were using at the time, and it had a sound that was like music to your ears. But while this partnership had massive potential, it was never meant to be. This is the story of how Lamborghini almost accidentally created the perfect Formula 1 engine and why we don't see McLambos on the grid today. So why was Lamborghini making an F1 engine at all? And why did McLaren test it? To answer these questions, we must first look back at the world of Formula 1 and the challenges McLaren faced in the early 1990s. Picture this, it's 1993 and the Formula 1 grid is packed with independent teams, manufacturer works teams, and some of the greatest drivers in the history of the sport. Everywhere you look, there's a legend. Ayrton Senna, Michael Schumacher, Alain Prost, the list goes on. At the top of the grid stands Williams, a Formula 1 team that has been dominating with their unstoppable cars, powered by Renault's revolutionary V10 engine. Ferrari, the sport's most iconic team, is once again fighting to reclaim its former glory, whilst the young Michael Schumacher is beginning to turn heads with performances that hint at future greatness. On top of that, we've got McLaren. Just a few years earlier, they were untouchable. They were the dominant force in the sport. But by 1993, they were struggling to keep pace with the frontrunners. McLaren certainly had the right driver in Ayrton Senna, but even the best in the world can't overcome a massive power deficit. The Renault V10 engines powering the Williams cars was simply game-changing. They left McLaren scrambling for an answer. From 1988 to 1991, McLaren were on top of the Formula 1 world, with Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost behind the wheel. They had claimed 4 consecutive Constructors and Drivers' Championships, and their partnership with Honda produced some of the most iconic cars in Formula 1 history, including the legendary McLaren Mp4, which Senna drove to his first title in 1988. But by 1992, things had changed. Honda was facing the impact of a global recession, and they announced their withdrawal from Formula 1. Suddenly, McLaren found themselves without a works engine supplier. The team principal at the time, Ron Dennis, was scrambling to find a replacement, but he was unable to secure the Renault engines, which were already committed to Williams, or anything comparable. Instead, McLaren had to settle for a customer spec Ford Cosworth V8. These engines were no match for the Renault V10s of the time, powering the Williams or even the factory spec Ford engines used by Benetton. McLaren's Mp4-7 and Mp4-8 were well-designed cars with solid aerodynamics and electronics, but their lack of power made them uncompetitive. Ayrton Senna, frustrated by the car's limitations, pushed himself to the edge race after race, but even his talent couldn't overcome the gap to the Williams. McLaren's dominance was fading, and the team needed a solution fast. That's when an unlikely opportunity came knocking, an offer from Lamborghini to test their V12 engine. It was powerful, loud, and overflowing with potential, but was it enough to save McLaren? Well, the short answer is no, but the story is interesting, and it all begins with a handshake. At the 1993 Munich Motor Show, Ron Dennis of McLaren and Bob Lutz, vice chairman of Chrysler, the parent company of Lamborghini at the time, struck a deal. Lamborghini had been supplying their V12 engines to smaller teams like Larousse, Lotus, and Ligier since 1989, but they wanted to prove its potential with a top-tier team. McLaren, desperate for a competitive engine, seemed like the perfect partner. The plan was bold: fit Lamborghini's LE3512 V12 engine, I know, catchy name, into the McLaren Mp4-8 chassis. But there was a catch. The engine had a reputation for being unreliable, and its size and weight posed significant engineering challenges for McLaren. McLaren ended up reworking their McLaren Mp4-8 to accommodate the Lamborghini V12 and created a modified version called the Mp4-8B. The process took 3 months, and the car ended up being stretched to fit the longer and heavier engine. The V12 at the time was badged as a Chrysler for the tests, and it produced an impressive 710 horsepower. That was more than the customer Ford V8 McLaren was racing at the time. When the car finally hit the track, the results were promising. Ayrton Senna was the first to test drive it at Silverstone in September of 1993, and his feedback was enthusiastic, to say the least. He described the engine as powerful but also smooth, and he suggested some changes to improve its mid-range performance. Mauro Forgieri, the engine's designer and a former Ferrari engineer, took Senna's advice. The revised engine gained approximately 40 horsepower in the mid-range, making it even more drivable, whilst only losing a small amount of the top end. Mika Hakkinen also tested the car and noted the same improvements. But his session ended dramatically when the engine failed in a spectacular fashion, scattering debris across the hangar straight. While reliability remained a concern, the potential for a McLaren-Lamborghini combination was undeniable. Hakkinen even noted up until the point of that detonation, everything felt more powerful than the current Ford engine. In testing, the MP48B was faster than the race spec MP48. The car was reportedly more stable and easier on tyres thanks to the engine's smoother power delivery, and Senna even hinted to the press that the Lamborghini-powered car could be competitive against the dominant Williams Renaults of the time, and the Benetton Fords. He was so impressed that he reportedly called Ron Dennis during the test at Estoril, urging him to consider racing the car for the Japanese Grand Prix. But despite the potential, McLaren decided against using the Lamborghini engine. By then, Ron Dennis had already signed a deal with Peugeot to supply the V10 engines for the '94 season. The decision was driven by a need for a works team, as Dennis believed this was a crucial partnership for long-term success. While the Lamborghini V12 did offer power, its history of reliability issues made it too risky for a team like McLaren at this point in time. By late 1993, Senna had also already signed with Williams for the '94 season, marking the end of his legendary partnership with McLaren. Years later, Ron Dennis revealed that Senna might have even stayed with the team had McLaren secured a works partnership with Peugeot earlier, or even if they'd used the Lamborghini engine. However, Senna always had serious doubts about the Peugeot's power, reliability, and the overall engine. And he wasn't alone. While Peugeot had shown promise in endurance racing, winning the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1992 and 1993, the intensity of Formula One demanded more. Senna believed the Peugeot engine couldn't match the dominant Renault V10, and the 1994 season proved him right. McLaren's MP4-9, powered by the Peugeot A6 V10, suffered from poor reliability, underwhelming performance, and it eventually became infamous for spectacular engine failures. This partnership lasted only one season before McLaren moved to Mercedes in 1995, a collaboration that would bring them back to their winning ways. Unfortunately, Senna's departure marked the end of an era at McLaren, and after his victory at the 1993 Australian Grand Prix, the team wouldn't win another race until 1997. Senna's move to Williams for the '94 season was supposed to be the start of a new chapter, a chance to pair his unmatched skill with the most dominant car in the sport. But it didn't turn out that way. On the 1st of May 1994, during the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola, Senna veered off track at the Tamburello corner and hit the concrete wall. This accident infamously claimed the life of one of Formula One's greatest legends. The McLaren engine situation of 1993 remains one of the greatest what-ifs in Formula One. What if McLaren had took the risk and raced the Lamborghini engine? Could the combination of Senna and the Lamborghini V12 have helped fight Williams in the 1993 season into 1994? And could it have kept Senna at McLaren for just one more season? There's no way to know. What we do know is the 1993 Lamborghini McLaren tests were a great story, and that Ayrton Senna's brilliance transcended the limitations of any car he drove. Other legends like Ronnie Peterson also had to make similar decisions when it came to which team they drove for throughout their career. Subscribe for more Formula One and watch my video on screen to learn the story of Formula One's Super Suite.